Got it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Chicago IANDS. Um, Today is Saturday, February 10th, 2024, and it's a beautiful day. And we're going to take just a minute and have a short meditation, as we usually do, to get the vibe going. So, if you have things on your lap, you might want to put them down and get yourself in a relaxed position so you can go where you go when you go. Welcome back. Well, um, just briefly, a couple of announcements. Thanks to Jason, we now have over 100 videos on YouTube of our previous lectures and meetings. And so you can always find a good place to go and enjoy spiritual uh, communication. Um, you can go to our website, and on the homepage, you can access the ones that are on the website, which are the ones which have been online meetings since the pandemic. And you can also access the cache of videos that we have on YouTube, which is the larger amount of them. So I just want to make sure everybody knew that, and we have all of those, and most of them are amazing. Some of them are absolutely off the charts. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. I also wanted to announce that our speaker next month is Elena Lieberman. If you don't know Elena, she's a wonderful intuitive reader who accesses the Akashic records and has done this for many years. One of her real strong points is that she is able to detach herself from what she does very, very strongly, and that makes her a very clear channel. So we're going to do something different next month. We're going to have a two-part meeting. So when you get your email, watch for two different Zoom links. One will be for the lecture at 2 o'clock, and the lecture will be about the Akashic records. And then at 7 that evening, same day, we will do a discussion and a question and answer. And she will talk to you individually if you have questions. So then you have to use the second Zoom link. We'll have to have two different ones. So keep that in mind, that next month is a little different. If it works out, we might do it again if it seems like it's a good thing. But at any rate, I hope that you'll be able to join us for that in March. Meanwhile, back here in the now time, we have Haneefa with us today. I'm just so grateful to have her. I've known her, what, 25, 30 years? About that. She came to the IANDS meetings early on, and she feels like an old friend to me from the moment I met her, and I've just enjoyed knowing her all these years. And I knew she had a wonderful, wonderful story, and recently I discovered that she's written about it, and the books are available on Amazon. The first one is this one. Can you see it? Oh, I don't know. There we go.
Yes. Mhm.
There we go. That's the first one. And the second one is at the moment in 4 parts, but it's being put into one, right, Haneefa? It's going to it's in 4 large print, easy read books, but it will be combined into one in the future. I'm not going to give a long introduction. I'm going to let her tell you her story. And so I'm going to turn this over to Haneefa. Welcome, Haneefa. Thanks for being here.
And thank you for welcoming me. And I welcome all the rest of you too. Thank you for being here. I had my near-death experience actually in 1982. And I'm going to kind of backtrack a bit and actually start with the after effects. Because I think that's the most important, how our lives change after near-death experiences, spiritual experiences, which can be out-of-body experiences, close calls, people who have actually been in accidents and had their cars totaled, and they walk away without a scratch, but they actually do get a life review and their life changes. I was I was baffled by the after effects. I started having dreams that recently deceased loved ones would send me messages to give to other people. And these were people I didn't even know that well. There was a sense of urgency that I needed to deliver those messages right away. Sometimes it was a financial situation, some papers, telling them where the papers were or whatever. Somebody else was concerned that her teenage son needed to have some guidance and some mentoring from the men in the community. She saw that the men were actually off doing other things, and she wanted them to, really catch up with her son. And I've received apologies and guidance for myself in dreams from someone who used to do a lot of criticizing other people. But she showed up to ask me to be more compassionate with my male friend at the time, which was kind of funny, but I got it. I understood it. Like, don't repeat the same mistakes she made. And some dreams that I have are actually humorous because I dreamt about a friend who lived in another city who had come to visit. And in a dream, she was craving chicken, which didn't make sense to her and to me and a mutual friend because we were all vegetarians. But in a dream, we actually were driving around trying to find an open chicken fast food restaurant. A month later, I told her about the dream, and she said when she was pregnant with her daughter, her only child, that she had craved chicken then. Her daughter is actually 21 years old and off in college already. So she and her husband had given up the idea of ever having more children. And she denied to me that she was pregnant. But I went off to college, and when I came back, she had a 2-year-old daughter. So much for that. Most distressing, though, was knowing what my friends were thinking at that time. It was like I had telepathy. You don't quite want to know that because all of us basically were thinking one thing, but politeness has us, saying perhaps the opposite. Or they might have actually been angry or whatever with me. I really prayed and prayed that that would go away, and it actually did in a couple of weeks. Also unnerving was seeing and rescuing children from possible accidents. Although their parents were nearby, they were in the same room, we were talking together, I was listening to them. But suddenly I got an image of my nephew, who was a toddler, and he was heading for the stairs. And I caught him just before he was about to fall down the stairs. Similar happened when I was traveling on a coach bus out of town heading for New York, and the bus broke down. And so we were waiting on the side of the road, but it was in a park area. And I was sleeping, kind of dozing, and I got the image of a little boy running out onto the highway. And I woke up, I looked out the window, I saw the father with the son, with the little boy. They were playing together. and I went back to sleep. But I kept getting the image of the kid running out towards the highway. And so I opened my eyes, looked out the window, and sure enough, that kid was actually running out on the highway. And not even thinking about it, I ran out there and grabbed him and brought him back. That, of course, really shook me up. I was actually trembling afterwards because here again, what do you say to the parents? And in that case, I had actually, risked my own life for that. I also knew about the Iraqi war, I guess when Kuwait was invaded. I was waking up from dreams in the middle of the night for like 2 weeks of seeing women and children running down the street with, homes burning behind them, bright, vivid orange flames. 4 months later, I suddenly turned on the TV. I didn't usually watch TV because I was in nursing school and studying, didn't have time for TV. And on the news, the United States admitted that it had actually been bombing civilians. Previously, the United States was bragging that they had the new Star Wars technology, which would help them hone in on just the military bases. These are things that you really don't want to know if you really don't have to. And I prayed and prayed to God to please help me understand what was happening to me as my whole life had changed. My values, I didn't really care about buying a lot of stuff anymore. In fact, with most conversations with other people, they became boring and trivial. It took about 8 years later when I was blessed with finding a book heading towards Omega in search of the meaning of the near-death experience. That's where I first heard the term near-death experience.
There's mellow there in a little plastic bag.
Donna, can you unmute, please? We can hear you.
My near-death experience happened well, it happened with ectopic pregnancy, and that's when the pregnancy is not in the womb. It can be in the abdomen or in any of the reproductive organs. It just happened to have been in my fallopian tube and ovary. 3-month size fetus. And so my fallopian tube and ovary ruptured, and I was bleeding internally for 4 days, at least 4 days in the hospital. It's possibly 7 days because I did have some sharp pains a few days before that. I had some bleeding. But anyway, it was Christmas time. So my doctor was on vacation, and so were a lot of other people, including nurses, of course. And so I didn't get much attention until my obstetrician came back. By then, I was considered in serious condition, in and out of consciousness. My husband had to sign for the emergency surgery. Anyway, I was pretty sick by then. My doctor pressed on my belly, and that's when I had my near-death experience. I found myself up by the ceiling, looking around, looking down. I saw myself on the hospital bed. And during that time, I also, from what I remember of my near-death experience, was mostly that incredible unconditional love, peace, and acceptance. I saw fields of beautiful flowers, really vibrant flowers that also gave me a sense of peace. I believe I saw some things of the future, of arguments, of being chased, that felt more like nightmares. But as is in the book, Heading Towards Omega, people, the reason why it's called Heading Towards Omega is because not only were people shown their life reviews, you know, from birth up to their present, but they were also shown the future. And he explains that from, you know, other people's stories, that it's possible, like people are shown the meaning and purpose of the universe, you know, a lot of knowledge. And they're also shown their future, but it may be just before an event happens that you might get a feeling of deja vu, or that something's about to happen. I probably had a life review because I woke up with what have I been doing with my life? What have I been doing with my life, over and over in my head. And I had that for days afterwards. With this talk here, I want to connect it up with current events. Unfortunately, a lot of the near-death experience stories in that book and other books is about maternal people almost dying in childbirth. There's also, unfortunately, because I have signed on to an ectopic pregnancy support group on Facebook, And you would think with all the new technology that they would be able to catch ectopic pregnancies in time, and they don't. People's ectopic pregnancies are still rupturing. We also have young people that are more promiscuous these days, and ectopic pregnancies a lot of them come from STDs. So when my husband used to say to me, honey, I think you need to go down to the Board of Health and get checked out. Not that I was messing around, but because he was. Yeah, and there's not as many antibiotics out there that work. Yeah, women can lose their lives. And now with the, the abortion debate, doctors, will make pregnant women, in their first trimester, wait and wait and wait before they do emergency surgery. And the courts, unfortunately, can turn them down. So a question that I would like to ask, because I did have infertility problems. It was 6 years that I had been married and hadn't had children. And I went to an obstetrician to help me get pregnant. So if y'all can put in a chat how many have experienced similar with both infertility and also perhaps almost losing your life with childbirth, or perhaps it happened to your wife or your daughter. The other book that I came upon is Beyond the Light: What Isn't Being Said About the Near-Death Experience. Because not everybody has that beautiful traditional going to a heaven-like place, having relatives that come and greet them. Some people actually go through what feels like a hellish situation. And you'll find some of those stories at IANDS videos. So I'm not going to go into them. I'm bringing it up because I'm also concerned in terms of our youth. There's lots of young people who have had near-death experiences, and perhaps they had a hellish one, although usually when people have hellish near-death experiences are frightening. Some of it is just the idea that they're in a void or they're in darkness, and that's scary. But they're going to come back with these after effects that I mentioned. And I'm going to mention some more here. Unfortunately, I don't know how many other counselors are here. Unfortunately, a lot are ending up in seeing psychiatrists even though the word has been out there about spiritual experiences. I'm going to share my screen here. This has come from PMH Atwater's research. She's come to IANDS and she's written a lot of books. Beyond the Light, which I was telling you about. In that book is a list of after effects. This came from her book, Children of the New Millennium, Children's Near-Death Experiences. And there's 4 phases of integration from the first 3 years after an NDE. So here we're talking about that unconditional love and oneness that we bring back with us. And with that can be a sense of fearlessness and impulsiveness. If you can imagine with a child that comes back with a lot of knowledge, a lot of knowing, that acts more like an adult now, that has a higher IQ, that becomes more like a genius, what happens to them? If I was so uncomfortable with as an adult and having difficulties relating to my peers and my colleagues, you can imagine what that's like for a child. I have some of the dates down here and what happened to me. So the 4th through 7th years is more of an adjustment, getting used to being back with family and a community. Might feel like having that you have more of a purpose and a direction in life and sharing. A lot of times on television, you'll see children who seem beyond their years in terms of helping out, you know, during clothing drives and raising money. But children actually have more difficulties during this phase with their family, their peers, and at school. And this is the time they may turn to using alcohol. In the book, Hand Towards Omega, it talks about when we come back, there's a sense of urgency for healing and healing one's emotional and childhood traumas. So I spent most of that time finding and learning alternative healing methods. I myself experienced and learned Reiki and massage, for example. What they called rebirthing or holotropic breath work. I went to sweat lodges. The 7th year tends to be more settled down, a bit more integrated. Here she has it as more practical, probably impulsive, getting back, I guess, to use your life. It took me a while though to get a more self-worth and self-confidence. And I will show you why in a little bit. And yes, all I thought about and wanted to talk about was spirituality stuff. It was being in a Native American sweat lodge and then coming to a African American spirituality church that actually helped me integrate most of the psychic distress. I learned how to deep breathe. I learned meditation. And to my surprise, a lot of my extra sensitivity decreased, where I was feeling other people's pain, their emotional and physical pain. If you were in a room with me, if you were depressed, I would get depressed. If you were angry, would get angry and wonder why. If you had back pain, I got back pain. It made it good for me being a healer though with Reiki, because I knew which part of the body to go to. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why it took me a while to get my confidence, or I would say I got some of my confidence, but I lost it a lot because phase 4, between the 12th and 15th year, maybe the 20th year, is what she calls a second shift or second drop. It's like having another near death experience because it's like your life falls apart. Immense fluctuations in mood and hormonal levels. Well, one thing I want to explore in terms of counseling is women in their 40s and 50s, because it's like women have a different midlife crisis. You might call it the dark night of the soul. There was a lot for me being discouraged or depressed about, grieving what my life used to be like and how it changed. So all of this, I had the problems with relationships, money, debts, anyway, but it's worth it in terms of if you can get through it. And we need more support for people going through spiritual transitions and transformations. So I had gone back to college in another state, not here in Chicago. I studied abroad in Zimbabwe, which is in Africa. I loved learning their culture, their healthcare and traditional healers from their medicine people or shamans. But when I returned to the United States, I was sick. I almost died again, probably a couple of times again. And eventually I became homeless, physically disabled. Was my sacrifices worth it? Was a good question. Of course, I became depressed with crises after crises. Integration. In 2004 was actually when I got diagnosed with a disability. So I would say that it took me about 10 years of kind of like a dark night of the soul in terms of having to learn and grow. But I would say throughout the years, I've had less personal crises, mostly peaceful and calm, and now able to help others. Diane had said that I've had a lot of traumas, but I think that what the traumas did is prepare me to be able to help others by going through what they went through. I have pretty much healed from my physical disabilities. The emotional pain is gone. The question is, have my psychic abilities faded? Sometimes it feels like it because I don't get those images and direct messages and dreams. That they're not as dramatic now in my face. I think they probably faded because postgraduate studies, technology, constant problem solving with deadlines gives me little time to pay attention. I don't remember my dreams, but somehow Spirit works with me during the night, having me doing projects and correcting projects for strangers I've never met. It feels like I'm semi-awake, and that's annoying. I really want to just sleep. But instead, if you want to call it integration, somehow I just know without knowing how I know. And that can be both comforting, and other times unnerving. My careers have changed a lot over the years. And as Diane said, she met me back in 1999. I found the book, Spiritual Emergencies. And in the back of that book, it's mentioned IANDS. But before I came to Chicago, I never even knew about a local IANDS group. And with IANDS, it's provides support and information about near-death experiences. It's Chicago IANDS, but it was located actually in Evanston. So I'm glad in a way that we have Zoom and we have YouTube videos, because another thing to consider is the cultural aspects, which would make people's near-death experiences different. I have been disappointed because there aren't that many African Americans and other people of color, so to speak, who have come forward and told their stories and what happens to them after they had a near-death experience. So you can also put it in the chat if you've had a near-death experience. There is a book, The Good, Clear, Dark, which is the only book I've seen that is on African Americans' near-death experiences. One of the differences is that going through that tunnel, that dark tunnel, actually feels comforting, as if being in a womb, instead of frightening. As some people describe, you know, it takes them a while to get through that tunnel, even if not much is happening in that tunnel before they meet up with the light. And the light is more of an energy of true, pure love and peace. Amazingly, though, African Americans report meeting up with a very, very dark-skinned woman. She's usually older, but she's beautiful nonetheless. And she seems to be familiar to them and seems to know them. Some people are put off by seeing her and go past her. But anyway, some white folks have actually seen her too with their near-death experiences. She greets them, you know, I guess kind of educates them too. But yeah, the book also has some suicides in there, and that's another current problem. Too many suicides. Most of the near-death experience videos online now is people who have returned from suicide attempts or overdoses. It's kind of good in one way because they can have, you know, more of a purpose and perhaps more peace as when they come back. But as you have heard, there is a transition period where there's the confusion, and there's also, oh my gosh, it was such a great place. Why did I have to come back to this earth with all this possible misery? I found comfort with the African and Native American spirituality because we've all been conditioned to be afraid of the so-called paranormal. As many paranormal studies they've done over the years, decades, probably hundreds of years, scientists will still say it doesn't, it's not real or whatever, and they supposedly keep proving it, trying to prove it. Which brings me around to Diane is also the one that told me about the Church of the Spirit, which I am also grateful for, because it reconnected me with my mother. I was very close with my mother. We did a lot of things together when I was a child, up until the age of 7, when she married my stepfather. And then it was like I didn't have her anymore. He took up all her time. He kept a lot of confusion going. And I guess he wanted to keep her barefoot and pregnant. So there ended up being 6 of us. So in short, it was like not having my mother anymore, even though she was there in the house. And probably some of you can relate. And then he decided that she wasn't taking care of my younger siblings, and he took the children away from her, the 3 youngest, and we ended up, those older ones ended up in a foster home. She came to visit from time to time, but it was kind of like my foster parents kind of pushed her away in different ways. And basically, I got on with my life, as an adult. So some 30 years later, with Church of the Spirit, I got introduced to mediums, and I didn't know what a medium was. I didn't even know what they were really doing at the church. It's a regular church. You sit in pews. We have sermons. We have hymns. We have prayers. And then at the end of the service, there's several mediums that will come through and give you a message from your loved ones that have passed on, or your spirit guides. And so they brought my mother through. With it, there was no way I could doubt it, because she told the medium things that nobody else could possibly know about some of my childhood, what was going on with me at that time. I was in graduate school. I was in a doctoral program. And I cried. I was speechless. But she basically told me I had some more healing to do, some more, as time went along, she gave me some really tough assignments to do. It's like, wow, it was being on an accelerated spiritual growth track. In a way, I don't wish it on anybody else. But since 2018, 2019, I think all of us have been on fast tracked with perhaps one challenge after another. And I'm glad that we are here to be with others of like mind. Church of the Spirit also brought through other relatives. My stepfather came through eventually. My own father came through. And they apologized in their different ways. And sure, it can seem like, oh, wow, that would be a usual thing that a medium would say. But again, there's things that wouldn't have been known. They call it evidential mediumship, where, you know, sometimes they will describe the person, some of the person's items, so that you'll know. And with it, I went on and took the mediumship classes at Church of the Spirit. What was precious to me was my grandmother coming through. Alan, what's his name? Hobson from England came and did a reading and brought my grandmother through along with my uncle. It was a long reading, had me in tears and speechless. My grandmother gave me the okay to share more of our family history. And that was amazing because she swore that she was going to take those family stories to the grave with her. And there's some that she still did, but she was secretive in that reading. So it's another way that let me know that it was her. And with putting it in the books and sharing it, it has actually brought my family and my siblings together. They appreciate hearing from my grandmother in the book. I would say writing your own book, your own memoir, even if you write it for yourself, even during this presentation here, it's healing. We're looking back on your life. And, you know, connecting it up with a near-death experience phases was interesting for me to do recently. I can try doing one reading. I do better with individual private readings, with over the phone or in person. It's harder. How many people do we have? We have 38 people, because I might pick somebody, but the reading actually could be for the person next to them or whatever. May I come to Karen? Would you like a reading?
Karen Kanzia, me? Yes, yes. Yeah, okay. Yes.
Here I'm seeing an open book, which is not unusual for me. I think it sometimes signals that I have my spirit guides helping me out here. But this book is open more like, you know, a box of chocolates, the big box of chocolates.
Mhm.
Yeah, actually it looks more like a box of chocolate. But back in the day, there were Bibles, right? That you could unzip and
Mhm.
they had the family history in there. I'm getting somebody that was somewhat musically inclined. They're showing perhaps it's a lamp. It's a lamp that's, what did they call those? It's in the shape of a flower. Which might remind you somewhat of their home. They're saying something about a christening. So I don't know if it's children or grandchildren.
Mhm.
I'm getting the impression that it may be a boy, a grandson.
Okay.
They're showing me stairs within a home. There is a bride and groom at the bottom of the stairs. They're posing for pictures. It's being done in a roundabout way, they say. But at least they did it. Cherries?
Mhm.
They're showing me cherries. Probably symbolic. And somebody's eyeglasses. And these eyeglasses are, they are chipped.
Hmm.
So it's probably back in the day because we don't have glasses anymore.
Right.
They're showing me a mantle. And on this mantle is white. And on this mantle is a clock. Okay, it says something about renewing vows. So maybe the clock is saying it's time to do that. And not to make a mountain out of a molehill. And that's what I have for you.
Thank you. I think it might be my niece and her husband. I think so. This makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
Not a grandchild, but a niece. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So in terms of kind of grieving some of the old stuff, some of the losses, when my psychic abilities were fresher, it's like with the mediumship, I have to work at, you know? The images aren't always as clear, and I might not hear as clear. And then it's, and for those who are wondering, when we hear, it's really subtle. It's more like a thought, not a voice, you know, that we hear. So it takes practice paying attention with that. Another current event that I want to bring up that's on my mind is, of course, all the wars that we've been having. It's not yet just Ukraine and Israel and Gaza and the Middle East. Believe it or not, there are like 55 different conflicts globally. With the Church of the Spirit, you know, we believe that life continues on, even though the person is not in the flesh. My first book that I wrote is more stories about how my mother came to me and guided me and helped me heal and gave me faith and trust and confidence in my intuition and being able to listen and follow guidance. My other books is about the indigenous use of what's called, well, some of you have probably heard of the I Ching, or throwing bones or coins or shells. It's another way of validating one's intuition. What you already know, but you want clarity and you want more guidance and you want more steps as to improve your situation. The book that I'm writing now is about what can we do to help out in terms of Ukraine and the war in the Israel-Gaza region. It's a book that's not about my life, but as the reading that I did unfolds, I actually asked what can President Biden do to help improve the situation, not only in the Israel and Gaza region, but also globally? Because as you know, in the Middle East, those are centuries, maybe 1,000-year-old wars. When we do readings, it's okay, what can I do to help? It's amazing because I used as many different cultures, ways of seeking guidance as possible. And I've done prayers that those different cultures use. But mostly we have to start with making sure that we have that love. People who have near-death experiences, they bring it back with them, they share it. Sometimes family and friends can get upset because we share the love, you know, with everybody, the love and the compassion. But that's what we are being asked to do, to not even have the slightest dislike with other people. Because if we think about all of us get tired, the wrong words pop out of our mouths. Sometimes, you know, we might pitch a fit and then later we don't mean it, right? If we can not hold grudges is the most important, and that we send love in our prayers around the United States and the rest of the globe. So that's what I have for y'all. If you can imagine, since 1982, I've learned a lot. And you know, I had to pick and choose and hope I didn't run out of time, you know. But now it's y'all's turn.
If people have questions, they can write them on the chat, in the chat box. Terry Larkin added some interesting things. She said she has to go, so I don't know. Are you still there, Terry? I think she had to go, but she also had an ectopic pregnancy.
I am still here. I'm sorry.
Oh.
It's been hard for me to leave, but I may have to go soon, but the similarities are quite striking. And I had an ectopic pregnancy in 1981. And then in 1982 is when I had my near-death experience, same year as you, but you know, same year as, yeah. And so what a year, because back then I didn't even have a word for it. I'm sure you didn't either. I didn't even know what it was. And I was living in a place where, you know, opening my mouth and explaining what happened during my NDE was just not a popular thing. I live in Michigan now. That's where I've grown up, but I was, my husband and I had been in many places, and we were in Tennessee at the time that I had my car accident, and Bible Belt of 1982 was not exactly, anyway, I know what you the path that you've gone through too, because we all do it, and you are right. For myself too, and just saying, we go through these stages of how we've learned this and we've learned that, and how in the world can we, I put myself back, whoops, I'm trying, I've had internet issues too. So the time frame that you're talking about, the time frame I'm talking about, are so similar. I mean, it's just like, wow, we have a lot of similarities. And I am a healer as well, and I do reconnective healing, but there is just so much in my life that's developed in chunks of years in my life, and how my life has changed. And so I'm right there with you. And I know how, you know, difficult it can be to be the one to come out and just do what you need to do and change what you need to change in your life. And the spiritual path of just absorbing whatever you could, because I did that too. I just had to. I had to absorb every single thing I could find to understand what my experience was all about. And so I thank you for sharing your gifts, your time. And I know in the last probably 4 or 5 years, I know that I have some mediumship abilities too. It's happened to me in kind of odd ways, and I could share stories, but but I haven't developed it like you have. I didn't pursue that. I've been doing other things. And but I know that we grow and learn through every experience we have. And I wanted to also validate for you, if it helps in any way, I don't know, that yes, I mean, I had so many events happen to me soon, you know, in probably the 10 years and then the 20th year after my near-death experience, and not as many now until I really invited them in. And I've finally been helping myself invite them in. I just started to write a new message and just say to you, you know, what a year, 1982, same time frame. And I applaud you coming out and talking. And I think I've just lost you again.
No, I'm here. I just shared the screen with the books. Somebody asked about the books.
Yep. And I can tell you that PMH Atwater has made a huge change in my life. I've read all of her books, you know, and yes, I mean, I list many, but I appreciate you sharing how difficult and why it is that more African-American people aren't sharing. And I hope they do, because our race makes no difference. That's what you learn when you go off to, you have an NDE, is our race is not who we are. It's not our soul. It's not our, so.
Yeah, we don't have bodies.
Yes. And yours.
Nobody really has bodies there. And that's one thing I forgot to say. I didn't know I had died. I just felt like I faded away. It didn't hurt. I just got weaker and weaker and weaker.
Yeah, and I won't tell my experience right now because it's not appropriate. This is your place. I just wanted to validate that the year and the journey that you've had is so similar to mine that I think I just wanted to say that. It's a beautiful place to be, to finally put some of the pieces together. And it's wonderful. So I thank you for your sharing.
Thank you for
You're
sharing.
welcome. And thank
You-
you.
Thank you for sharing too, Terry. Terry has spoken for us. She has a wonderful book, and perhaps she'll come back and talk to us some more at some point.
I would love to do that at some point because beyond my book, I could write another book. There you go, of all the
I
things.
know, I know what you mean. It doesn't end. It doesn't end.
It does not end. It does not end.
It just
And
keeps going.
I'm sure that our guest here tonight, your guest has experienced that too. It just doesn't end.
Right.
Well, I miss IANDS
Yeah.
in person because Diane would have tables, at least 3 long tables full of books, most of them near-death experience and other experience books. And I'd always arrive early and buy books until they wouldn't fit on my shelf anymore. And now I do Kindle.
My
Smart.
bookshelves are overflowing, so I can relate. And I keep thinking, okay, why are these books overflowing on my shelf instead of being in the hands of other people? And that's kind of where I've gotten right now, realizing, oh my goodness, I have so many, and I need to share more.
Yeah. I've accumulated a large library too of books, and I'm 80, and I have health challenges, and it makes it difficult to think about going back to the hospital, especially with all of the germs that are still out there and the people that are getting sick from all kinds of different things. But my initial idea with the books was that someday Chicago IANDS would be a storefront, and that we would have a library in the storefront. But we never got the storefront, therefore we never got the library. So I've been looking around for a spiritual organization that might want to establish a library, but have not yet found the one, whatever that might be. But I'm sure, I have absolute trust in my guides. They pick our speakers, and they talk to me, and I too, like you, Haneefa, and have had psychic things happen, and like you, Terry, I chose not to pursue them because my guides were saying at the time that that's not what I was supposed to do at that time. So I trust that you are supposed to do this, Haneefa, because you're doing it, and that you will be of service in that way. I think it's really wonderful. Wow. Does anybody have, are there any questions on here? Have you looked, Haneefa? Let's see. Do you have any more readings or information for others at this Zoom on this? Is there anybody else that's calling to you to say something about, Haneefa? Somebody's asking.
Other books?
Other people.
Well, thank you, Terry. I'm glad you stayed and shared as long as you did. I have, oh gosh. I think with the books, the near-death experience books, it depends on what you're interested in. Some books, like I try to do a variety of books. For veterans, there's If Morning Never Comes.
Ned. What's his name? Ned.
That,
NED is his first name.
yeah, I'm not sure of his last name. I gave that book away. That's a good one. Yeah, there's a lot of books with mediums. They have had near-death experiences. But yeah, there's lots and lots. Like I said, I try to do other cultures.
No, it's Bill Vandenbush.
Brandenbush, yes.
That
And he
was,
came to IANDS and spoke
yes, he did.
for it too.
Yes, he did.
I
I
just
like,
uploaded one of his videos.
Now, Jason is just uploading his video onto our
2004, November 13th, 2004. It's on the website.
it's on the website, so you can watch it if you're interested.
I like the book Spirited.
Spirited.
Yes. And I bought her new book too. It's pretty good. But that was book validated for me that it was possible for my mother to actually to have been helping me from the other side. For her, it was her grandmother. And she helped her through the use of automatic writing. She was journaling. And like me, soon after my near-death experience, I would be writing letters to friends and my hand would just take off by itself. And her grandmother helped her through depression, helped her lose weight, gave her a lot of tips for coping, which is interesting because the grandmother had died from suicide. So she helped, you know, the next generation from the other side. And other cultures, you know, in Asia, Africa, Mexicans also, you know, keep up a relationship with their ancestors after they pass. We miss out on a lot. We could, you know, be saved from a lot of crises. We would just listen.
Yeah.
Although we don't listen to our parents when they're here, when we're younger.
Yes. Shannon asked, for those who have not had an NDE but have abilities and are lost in the dark night and traumas, how do we find our way through and out to the other side to find our path? Do you want to address that?
Yes, and I'm thinking about it and I'm actually working on it because like I said, there's a lot of women coming for counseling that are in their upper 40s, 50s. I think first of all, a lot of cultures also have rites of passage. We have celebrations, one-day celebrations, our funerals. You go to the funeral and afterwards there isn't community support or anybody to normalize, you know, what a spiritual transition is like. I think the deep breathing, the meditations, and most importantly, having support like IANDS and, Church of the Spirit. You can come up with your own support groups too. I think what makes the dark night of the soul so bad is that people think that they're going through it alone and they're scared.
Craig asks, how can we help transition into the age of Aquarius, given all of the violence, political conflict, etc., that is going on? It currently appears that our country is going to the dark side politically.
That also goes along with the prior question.
Yeah.
I am so touched, grateful, inspired, because there's plenty of groups. Somebody was telling me that they were doing there was a spiritual group of 700 people, and their topic was, be careful what we say, that what we say can hurt more than, even the physical violence at times. Just tidbits like that. But the way to turn it around is, as I'm doing with the Gaza and Ukraine situation, is when that fear about the future crops up, what do you want instead? The fear is put out there on purpose, but can you, let go of the fear? Because if you think about it, even for the decisions that are made in Washington and Congress and all that, they're thousands of miles away. It's us that make our decisions, our intentions for each day, for how we're going to live it, right? They're not making our decisions for us. So we can choose, to be calmer, peaceful, happier. If you're worried about the economy, you can have, honestly. That's something I learned since my near-death experience. The money and whatever I need, people, just shows up. So some of it's faith and trust too that you can have.
Exactly. One of my wonderful experiences since I went to the other side was with a wonderful intuitive medium named Greta Alexander. She's in a little paperback called 100 Best Psychics in America. And I had the great opportunity to get to know her. And I had breakfast with her out in Elgin at 6 o'clock in the morning, one Sunday morning, about 15 years ago. And the one thing she said to me, she said, one of the most important things to remember at all times is to listen and trust. Listen and trust. And that's been kind of one of my personal mottos. Listen and trust. Because I believe that all things work together for the good of those who love God. And that your guides and your loved ones on the other side, as well as here, they all come together if you're willing to listen to what you hear and to trust what you're told.
And follow through. That's the other main point I wanted to make.
Yeah.
Be
Would-
ready to do different and new.
Yeah.
Of course, if we keep doing the same thing, in answer to that question, of course we'll have the misery and the darkness. It's actually more than praying. I like to say that spirituality is not about praying to a God or this or that. Spirituality is having the faith that things can and do get better. The faith that comes from within.
Yeah. Absolutely. Can I ask you a question, Haneefa? She thinks I'm too inquisitive. Um, how long were you homeless? And, and would you be willing to share some of that experience, what it was like?
I was homeless without a place to stay for like a couple of months. And then I went into the shelters, which then had me in transitional housing. But that's still considered homeless because even with the transitional housing, the landlords could kick us out, which they did. If people, were using drugs and having, unscrupulous visitors in the building and stuff, or if the city at one point was, as we know can happen, was too late with those grants to pay the rent, they would put us out and move us to a different building.
Wow.
It was like a couple of years from 1999 to 2001 before I actually anyway got away from the shelters.
But you are such such a perfect person to talk about these things because look what you've done. You've turned your life around and you've taken what you had and you manifested. And it's such an incredible lesson and such an it's just a wonderful, wonderful story and can be inspiring to so many people.
What helped me with the homelessness part is I had the Native American book, Sacred Path cards. They were in storage. A friend put my belongings in storage.
Uh-huh.
And when I got, when she took them out of storage for me, one of the first books that I picked up was the Sacred Path cards. And the card was Field of Plenty.
Wow.
And basically, the teaching in there is that with the Native Americans, actually the so-called Thanksgiving was actually to show the the folks who came over on the boats that they needed to let go of their fear of scarcity, that there wasn't enough. It also talks about acting as if you have it now. That's the best way to manifest. Being grateful, if you want to say to God or Great Spirit or whatever, that you have it already. Because I was depressed, I was ready to give up, wanted to die. And then I got that book. And from there on, what I needed just started, and the people that I needed just showed up.
Yep.
But sometimes I know somebody asked that question in terms of how do we get out of that dark space when it's hard to see that light at the end of the tunnel, that there's hope or that anything will change. I would say in one way, it's kind of builds your faith, a test of faith. It wasn't all given to me all at once, little by little. I think, yeah, then you know you have it, and then you know it's for real.
Yeah.
Then situations change for the better, the people in your life change for the better.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to, I think the hardest part of the dark night of the soul is shaking loose the old habits. Because even like the reading I did for a marriage, for instance, or even graduating high school, for example, your life is not the same. You can't go back to high school, right?
Mhm.
You move on to a job or whatever else. Once you get married, even though you're divorced, you still have changed with learning how to get along with another person.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we have to make space for the new. I think a lot of what's going on in the world now, it's like another book to read is Phoenix Rising. It has a list of predictions that have all come true, all the way up to somebody describes similar to Trump. World leaders making deals behind the public's back. And then all of those secrets being exposed to the public. And that's what's been happening now. There's a lot more in there. The pandemic's in there. But the good thing is, also with heading towards Omega, both of those books say that as we change, these disasters and stuff will go away and it will bring in a time of peace and equality. It's us deciding when we've had enough is enough. You know,
What was the
for a
name of the
better
book?
world. Phoenix Rising.
Phoenix Rising? The one that you talked about with the predictions?
Yes, it's by Mary Summer Rain.
Okay, Phoenix Rising. Thank you.
I read that back in 1990, and that's another thing that kept me going forward. The inspiration to keep going.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Wow. Interesting times. But the most interesting thing is there's nothing to be afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing to be afraid of. Ah, yeah. I think we've kind of hit everything. Do you see anything else that we missed on the chat line?
I've only gotten part of the chat. So I was letting you see what you saw.
Claire said, I don't know what else to do but prayers on war zones. What I do every time I eat is sending vibes of food
Mm-hmm.
all around the world and beyond. We have enough, we could easily sustain this planet if we all work together to do it and sustain every person on it. It has to be a willingness to cooperate and work together and share, you know. So let's hope that does that. I think they say it's always darkest before the dawn. And as things get lighter, things also get darker before they resolve. So I think we're on the right path. And it's going to all be better, right? We have nothing but good to look forward to.
No, there are other Phoenix Rising books out there. There's like 4 of them. The one I'm talking about is by Mary Summer Rain.
Okay.
Amazon carries it even in Kindle form, so
Mm-hmm.
easy to get, only $9 or $10.
Which is good because they were out of print and they didn't have them at the libraries, I think because of those predictions that were in there. And the only way I could get mine was used on Amazon. But now they're reprinted, and as Alice said, you can get it on a Kindle too. Spirit Song also is the first book, actually. And there are predictions in there too.
Haneefa, can you give us an example of one of the predictions that stood out for you that we now know, you know, that's true?
One is that people will stop going to work because they don't see the benefits. I mean,
Wow.
that one, I thought it's just that people would just quit, but I think the corporations did it to themselves. Because in 2008, well, started in 1990, and people blamed Obama for the economy back then. But those of us who are old enough saw the factories close and go overseas in 1990, in the 90s. Then 2008, with the, what do they call it, a Great Recession, the companies laid off of people. They actually started getting better with their businesses. They got a profit, but they saw that they could do with less workers. So they had people doing a job of 2, 3, 4 people, just one person. People got worn out. The other thing was, even though, for example, Trump said he made more jobs, what happened was he made more part-time jobs and temp jobs, more freelance jobs. And even before he got in there, what they were doing is hiring people for 90 days, right?
Yep.
Then letting them go before they would give them their benefits, the healthcare benefits and 401ks and stuff like that. Then they had people coming in part-time. And then it got to the point where even with part-time, you had to call in to see when you could come in. People didn't have steady work. Then came 2020. And of course, it was out there for all to see as far as the economy and the jobs. They still thought that they could still do people that way. But then people were like, you know, I'm losing friends and family members. I could lose my own life. I have better priorities. And they also didn't come back to full-time work or work in the offices and stuff. So that one, they were calling it the Great Resignation, the Great Quit. If you go to YouTube and type in lying flat, it's not just in the United States. The Chinese, their youth were quitting before they were quitting here in the United States. Because everything is so expensive that what does that little check do? As far as paying rent and food, and they're worried about the population in China and here. Nobody can afford to get married and have kids.
Yeah.
So that's one that definitely, you can't argue with that prediction.
Wow.
And definitely the secrets being exposed one after another for the past 8 years or so.
I was just listening to Rob Reiner's podcast on the JFK assassination, and some background information that's come out more recently, that was redacted or kept secret for decades. It's very interesting. Same thing. These secrets were probably known by a certain few for a very long time.
So those predictions actually were expected to come true in the 80s, mostly 90s. So you're talking about 30 years later.
Right.
The natural disasters is in there, the amusement park rides, accidents, freak accidents, because nobody has time to, or, well, they might be smoking some stuff, or they might not have enough sleep. So the airplane recently with the Boeing with the door that fell off because they didn't tighten the screws or forgot some screws.
Yeah.
It's in there.
You know, I work in the legal industry and all day I skim legal documents, complaints filed in court. And up until the pandemic, I never saw a typo. I never saw a grammar error because Microsoft Word helps you with all that. And someone's supposed to sit down and proofread. And I have found the most hysterical errors. Like someone recently was referring to an heirloom, a family heirloom. He spelled it AIR space LOOM, heirloom, not HEIRLOOM. This was a mature person using Microsoft Word, but I find lawyers doing it constantly. There's just no, people aren't focused, you know? They're kind of drawn in a lot of different directions. And I sent this to like 20 people. This guy is this attorney's arguing his case, and an extremely important sentence at the top of a paragraph, he undoes his argument. You know, and you're like, send it back to this guy. I don't do it.
Education is not what it once was either. I almost everything I read, I see grammatical errors and just a lot of things. People don't know and don't pay any attention and don't care. Maybe I don't know.
Diane, that's what I was starting to see.
Ever changing technology too.
Yeah.
The autocorrect, even if you put it in there the right way, it will come behind, sneak behind you and change it.
Yeah.
This is true. Yes. And we depend on autocorrect. That's the other thing. You know, we depend on it cluing us as to grammar errors.
But it misses too many. Yeah. Well, folks, it's been great having you all here today. Look forward to seeing you next month with Elena Lieberman and learning about the Akashic Records. She's very gifted, and I know you will enjoy her. And don't forget, it's a 2-part meeting, and you need 2 different Zoom codes, which will be in the emails. So.
Diane, is she the one who's originally from Chicago?
She was originally from Chicago. She lives in Florida now, but she's still doing readings, and her readings were always very, very. She's a clear reader. She, relatively speaking, nobody's 100%, but she's at the top of the list.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Haneefa, it's been a wonderful pleasure. Thank you so much. Really, really glad to have you. And so happy I know you. It'll be interesting to see where we go from here.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Haneefa. See you tomorrow, probably, right?
In the morning, yes.
Okay. Marcia, are you still here? Marcia?
I'm still here. Are we ready to end?
I think we're about.
Thank you, Haneefa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Haneefa. Thank you.
Nice to see you all.
Welcome and thank you for coming.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Come.
Keep talking. I mean, keep spreading the word. Keep sharing. Keep writing books.
Oh,
You.
yeah, there was a sense of urgency with the book that I'm writing now. I'm supposed to be doing other things. At least I thought I was supposed to be doing other things.
Listen and trust. Listen and trust. You'll do the right thing.